Good morning, everyone. Technical hitches, but we're through them now. So very pleased about that. And first item is declaration of interest. Are there any interests on matters on the agenda? Nope. Okay. Apologies for absence, please, James.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Kelly and Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Next item, minutes of the meeting are held on the 8th of June. First of all, for accuracy, I'll just give it a moment to see if everyone's okay with that. Yes. And any matters arising? Nope. Okay. One matter arising from me, and that's later on our work programme, be raising the issue from the last meeting, which is referred to in the minutes in relation to the environmental officer, and then we can talk about that for our work programme, possibly then, as we said at the last meeting. Grant?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question on the work programme. We have on today's agenda, we have the bridges in Elsham. I do recall asking Mr. Courtier to include the Reedham Quay as one of the capital works that was going to be put on, and I don't see that on the work programme. So I was just wondering if Mr. Courtier had forgotten to put it on, or if it is going to be put on.
Just in relation to the minute at the moment, are you saying, Grant, that this is what you raised at the last meeting, or this is previously?
I think this would be a previous meeting that we talked about the work programme.
I do recall what you was referring to from a previous meeting. I really do. I didn't think it was this meeting. So at the moment we're on the minutes, matters arising here. But when we get to the work programme, please raise that there, and then we can have a proper discussion, because it was a previous one. I'll remember that as well. Thanks, Grant. Right, so now the matters arising. Chairman's announcements, none. Public speaking, James?
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
And the first item of business is item 7, community safety update. And Amanda sorry, Amanda, and Liam Banyan are here to present. So thanks for your attendance, and look forward to your amplification. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. And it doesn't matter how you say that second name, because it belongs to my husband. Right. Okay. Thank you ever so much for letting us come today. And thank you, Mike, for sorting this out for us to come today. I am the manager of the Norfolk County Community Safety Partnership on behalf of the local authorities and responsible authorities. And my colleague here, Liam, we're going to tell you about where we are with the strategy development for the Community Safety Partnership. What I need to make very clear is that Norfolk is in a very unique position from where we were nationally. The Office of the Police and Crime Commission has taken on a memorandum of understanding with Norfolk County Council that we will hold the Community Safety Partnership team within our Office of the Police and Crime Commission. And that is very unique, as I say, nationally. But we actually see that as an amazing opportunity to have the Community Safety Partnership plan and also the Police and Crime plan working in synergy together to build those resilient communities across Norfolk. And we are being looked at nationally to look at how we are managing that, because there is no roadmap for that. We're quite unique in what we're doing. But it's about making sure that we work with not only police data, but partnership data to inform how we are having that public health strategic approach to an evidence base dealing with what we're dealing with across the county. And the strategic plan from 2018-2021 has come to an end. And we, myself, Liam, and we do have other team members that we'll tell you about in a moment. We've been working on a strategic assessment that has been done by the police and our partners, looking at what those priorities should be going forward, and Liam will talk to you about them. Previously, we had domestic abuse, county lines and prevent, but we're a very, very different beast in Norfolk to what we were in 2018. And going forward, we have more responsibilities to be looking at on behalf of the partners. But we are still a community safety partnership. We still have to reduce reoffending. We have to tackle crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour issues, alcohol and substance misuse, and any other issues and behaviour which has a negative effect on the community. So whilst I've talked about the community safety plan today, I have to make sure that people are aware, because there is a bit of confusion. This is not the policing crime plan from the Office of the Policing Crime of Norfolk. It is the community safety plan on behalf of the partnership. Okay. Liam and I are more than happy to take any questions you have. We'll do a 10-minute presentation and then have that opportunity for questions from yourself. So Liam, I am going to hand over to yourself.
Thank you, Amanda. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about how we've developed our current the proposed strategic plan. Easy for some to say. So we, the Community Safety Partnership, agreed at its January meeting in 2021 that the priorities that it wanted to look at, and I'll come on to those in a little while. When I say it agreed, it based those on the strategic assessment, and those are the priorities that it wanted to look to use across the county, so long as there was sign up from all the relevant organisations. In addition to using that information from the strategic assessment, we also consulted with the different organisations that make up the Community Safety Partnership, them being the responsible authorities. So district councils we consulted we've consulted with probation, police, the list goes on. So in terms of what else we've added into the plan, we wanted it, the Community Safety Partnership wanted it to be an evidence-led plan. So we wanted to base it on what we knew were the issues in Norfolk and what we knew could be solutions to those issues. And we also wanted to develop a locality focus. So we wanted to work, the communities across Norfolk are vastly different. Broadland is different to Breckland, and Norwich is different to Grey Yarmouth. So we kind of want to be cognizant of that. In addition to that, there is quite a bit of legislative change coming our way over the coming years, coming through at the moment. So the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 is a huge piece of legislation. We're looking to we've kind of reviewed where that is at the moment, and looking to make sure that we cover as a partnership what we need to be covering. Again, the serious violence duty is going to be coming through. It has partnership responsibilities in terms of our response to serious violence. And again, there's amendments to the prevent duty, and the Home Office has set new policing priorities. So that's the kind of information that we needed to include when developing our plan. So it's quite a detailed plan. In terms of where we've got sign off for or agreement for it, so far, obviously, I mentioned we've got it from the Community Safety Partnership. We've also taken this plan to the Leaders Board, and they've agreed the principles that underpin it, and also the priorities. And we've also taken it to the Norfolk's Chief Execs Group. So we've got kind of agreement on the principles from several different areas. So what are the priorities? I've alluded to them a little bit. First one is we want to have serious violence as a priority for Norfolk, and within that we've included domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and county lines linked violence and knife crime. So it's a huge topic, and the reasons that we've wanted to include that in our community safety plan is that domestic abuse is one of the most prevalent issues in the county. I think it accounts for more than 20% of all calls to police. Sexual abuse is one of the highest harm crimes in terms of its impact, as I'm sure you're aware. And in terms of, and again, the same can be said for county lines and knife crime. They're really high impact crimes that rightfully we should aim to prioritise. And of course, there's been a rise in that type of crime over recent years. So another reason to see that as a priority. Our next priority is preventing extremism. Local authorities have a responsibility on them, the prevent duty, to work together to tackle or prevent extremism and prevent terrorism. Obviously, that is, again, it's a very high harm crime type. So those are the kind of reasons that we wanted to include preventing extremism as a priority for Norfolk. Criminal exploitation covers things including modern slavery and county lines. We see it as needing to be a priority because it's so hidden. It's really difficult to identify, a really difficult crime to identify, and there's kind of more evidence coming to light that there is a need to respond to it effectively, and also modern slavery. The modern slavery duty came in 2015, I believe. So again, another reason that we need to be responding to that appropriately. The final two for priorities are neighbourhood crime. So that covers acquisitive crime, antisocial behaviour, community tensions, and hate crime. That's our definition of it. These are crimes that affect us in everyday life, and also having been a victim of these kind of crimes, it can be quite problematic as well. So they do have a severe harm on a victim as well. And the final one is fraud. Fraud accounts for, I think, annually there is about £16 million lost every year in Norfolk for victims of fraud. So rightfully so. I think we see this as a priority, and the financial impact doesn't take into fact the emotional impact that can have on victims as well. So those kind of the reasonings for our priorities in the community safety strategic plan. In terms of our approach, the way that we want to try and respond to these issues is we want to, as Amanda's already alluded to, we want to follow a public health model, and that focuses on preventing these crime types, and it focuses on using the evidence available to us to do that, to try and identify interventions that will respond to that, to those issues, and therefore prevent them. As I've alluded to already, we want to have a locality focus, acknowledging the different areas, and we want to work to respond to issues on a locality basis. Part of a crucial part of the kind of the community safety partnership work is about communicating to the public issues and communicating within the public sector and private sector and tertiary sector about these issues, and making sure that people are aware of them, that need to be aware of them, and are able to respond effectively to those issues. So effective communication is going to be key to our approach. We need to be cognizant of the effect of the COVID-19 response. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on resources and availability, and it's going to also impact on the way that these crimes have been committed over the recent years. So we kind of just need to be aware of the impact of that. And finally, in our response in order to make our plan happen, the PCC has agreed to provide the Community Safety Fund, which is £500,000 worth of funding to help deliver interventions that follow this approach, tackling the priorities that we've set out. So that's kind of an enabling fund for the Community Safety Partnership Plan. In terms of what we're looking to achieve out of our plan, we've got 12 long-term intended outcomes. I'm not going to go through all of those because it's quite dry for one. But in terms of a real summary about what that looks to do, it's about, we want to kind of increase the community's confidence in the public sector about how we're going to respond to these issues, and that our response is effective. We're going to be looking to support victims to cope and recover from their experience. We're going to be looking to obviously prevent crime and antisocial behaviour. That's as I talked about the public health approach, that's kind of central to that. And the last part of it is about identifying victims. You remember me talking about modern slavery? It's kind of a hidden crime type. We want to be able to kind of identify where victims are, because they're not being contacted by services in Norfolk. In terms of how we're going to deliver out, the Community Safety Partnership has the Prevent Delivery Group and Cohesion Group. So that's going to be how it delivers its response to prevent and hate crime. It's got other groups like the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Group and the County Line Strategic Group and the Norfolk Anti-Slavery Network. All of those, they have kind of they own the policy area for the multi-agency response in Norfolk. So that's kind of how we're looking to deliver devolved through those partnership groups, and then the final group is there's going to be a serious violence task and finish group established to meet the serious violence duty, which is about forming an evidence-based analysis of the problems associated with serious violence in the local area, and then strategizing how you're going to respond to that. So I talked a little bit about locality delivery structures. Just to go into a tiny bit more detail, I am the community safety officer. There's going to be 2 community safety officers, but each community safety officer is going to own or work. I shouldn't say own. Work with different localities. And one of my areas is going to be Broadland, so I'll be looking to work with your council area to kind of help drive the priorities that I've already mentioned, but also to work on a kind of locality basis to identify the unique issues within communities and try to raise those up through the community safety partnership and respond to those on a higher level, or make sure that our plan is able to influence those issues. And obviously, I'll be looking to do that through the OPTs, the policing teams, the antisocial behaviour action groups where they exist, early help hubs, and locality boards. So where are we now? The plan is out to consultation at the moment. It started on the 24th of May, and it's out for 8 weeks, so it finishes on the 16th of July. We're promoting it via our social media. It's on our website, it's on our Facebook page, and it's on our next door page, which is kind of a new social media platform we're trying to use, the PCC's office is trying to utilise. What we're looking for is to get as big a response rate as possible. So any help to promote that is greatly received, and also we're kind of the other in terms of other next steps, we're liaising with the different district councils in Norfolk to try and sign off our plan, and that's why we're here today. We're looking to ask yourself, ask this meeting if you're willing to sign this strategic plan off. If you agree with the priorities that we've set out, if you agree with the approach that we've set out, and also I think that kind of covers what we're looking to achieve from today's meeting. So thank you for listening to me ramble on about community safety. I'd be keen to hear any questions or comments.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Soon.
Thank you, Jim.
No, there we go. Now I'm working. Thank you, Chairman. It's a question about. Sorry, it was a very good presentation and very informative, and yeah, I would totally support your priorities going forward. One of the things that you mentioned was effective communication, and I know that we do get some sort of like crime statistics at parish council meetings. Now, I'm particularly thinking in terms of the parish councils that I attend. They often bemoan the fact that the information that is reported on statistics, the crimes that particularly take place within the community, they're out of date and they don't include all the particular crimes. Like, for example, there's nothing about fraud, for example, that is reported as a crime. And for a community to be aware of, I think it would be very helpful if when information is reported locally, that it is up to date, for example, as a first thing, and relevant. So it covers all crimes, not just those which, for example, not high violent or something like that crime. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. We will take that on board. Definitely, it is our ambition to ensure that the data that we have is incorporates not just crime data, but data that comes from our partnerships, because there are many individuals who will go to other organisations to report what has happened to them and not necessarily come to the police. So it's our ambition for our outcomes to measure those outcomes as well, so that that information is available. One of the issues that we've identified is that the current Community Safety Partnership web pages need transformation. And that will be our ambition, to make that transformation happen so it is relevant and up to date, and so it is communicated. But we don't want to be just digitally exclusive. We want to be inclusive of all communities. So that's one of our ambitions, to ensure that members of the public know what a community safety partnership does, know how a community safety partnership can benefit them. And also, when the community safety partnership work together on the different boards, forums and groups, that information can be translated in a one single location where people know where to go and get that help, that advice. And if we haven't got that relevant, up-to-date crime data that you're talking about, maybe on a monthly or a week, a 2 monthly basis, we know where we can access information that will be of help and benefit to those in the community as well. So we will take that on board. Thank you ever so much.
So,
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the priorities, really. I'm wondering whether people of Broadland would be surprised to see prevention of extremism and preventing terrorism, and whether you could just elaborate, is that across the whole of Norfolk or just specific areas? And also under 3, it was neighbourhood crime. If you could just elaborate, what does that cover, please? Thank you.
Okay, Liam, if I take prevent and you want to do the neighbourhood crime, okay, we are a joint team here. In relation to prevent, I don't know if you're aware, but the new prevent duty was issued in April 21 this year. And that is to ensure that we as partners tackle extremism, but it's also about giving support and early prevention. And early prevention is for everyone who has public facing, who are members of the public. And yes, we have individuals reported into our channel panel process, if people are aware of that, about support for those who are subject to exploitation, extremism, and that is for the whole of Norfolk. It's not just for Norwich or Great Yarmouth or the Kings Lynn area. I think people have got to realise that it is hidden. There are left wing, extreme right wing, and people need to be aware of what that is and how that works. And we rely on yourselves as elected members, which is really important, to get that message out to the community, to be aware of that, because many people don't think it happens in sleepy places in the middle of Norfolk. It's not happening here, but you don't know what goes on in someone's house. You don't know who's communicating to them through maybe a computer when they are becoming vulnerable, and that vulnerability could be through any of the key thematic themes that we've discussed today. It could be they don't want to be part and parcel of being in their home environment, maybe through domestic abuse. Maybe they are being drawn into county lines or gangs, and we need to make sure, and our team will make sure, that we cross-cut against all those themes, and we will become omnicompetent amongst the boards and forums, so that as a team, if we become made aware of something, we have that data source, that pool, and working with the community safety officers on the districts as well to make them aware. And in Broadland, you do have members who are on our Prevent Delivery group, and we're working together to ensure that everyone is trained and aware of what is extremism, what signs should I be looking for. If I do see signs, who do I report it to? Who can I take that concern to? So it is vitally, vitally important. And we all travel around the country, we all go on holiday. So again, it's about being that conscious member of the public as well. Does that help? Thank you. Liam?
Thank you. Just to cover off neighbourhood crime, but the specific ones we mentioned, for specific crime types we mentioned within the plan is acquisitive crime. So that means burglary, robbery, the things where you're getting kind of almost a monetary gain out of committing that crime. So that specific crime type tends to be more prevalent, obviously, in higher urban areas with more deprivation. That's generally the case, but it does take place across the piece. So that's kind of why we want to focus on it. We want to focus on areas that are more acutely affected by it, perhaps, but we're kind of cognizant that it happens all over Norfolk. In terms of, we're also talking about antisocial behaviour. Obviously, with district councils, that's kind of it's part of your response to working with your communities is antisocial behaviour. We're looking to kind of work more closely with policing and make sure that the response is appropriate. And antisocial behaviour affects all communities. It's not about where it's more acute. I think the kind of tensions between in local areas can escalate regardless. And the final crime type that we're looking to include in that is hate crime. Obviously, that kind of, again, it kind of affects different communities in a different way, to greater or lesser extents. But again, the idea is that there needs to be a place for it in the partnership landscape for this to sit. And I think that at the moment, the community safety partnership is the right place to take that forward. I think that we can. There are interventions that we might be able to look at that would be able to improve community tensions and therefore go on to prevent hate crime. In terms of it in Broadland, I haven't got the information in front of me, but I believe that there would be kind of an amount of those crime types occurring in Broadland that would kind of necessitate some level of response. So yeah, that's neighbourhood crime.
Can I just bring into that and correlate into that? Teddy Munro, who works here, is actually the chair of the Prevent Delivery Group in the county, and we're working to co-chair that with Terry to take that group to the next level and prioritising with our new Prevent duty. And part of that is we will be bringing hate crime within to the Prevent group, so it will become the Community Cohesion and Prevent group moving forward for the community, because it does make sense to bring it together.
Thank you. Ken, and then Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. Quite rightly, you covered a very wide range of cases. You made reference, I think, to a website. Are the details of what you put to us today on the website? And which website would you point us to particularly?
In relation to the draft strategy, we have used a landing page on our Office of the Police and Crime Commission pages, and we will make sure that you have that link by the end of your session today, so that we will email that over to yourselves so you have that. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to give you the URL unless you have that there, Liam. Go for it.
I've got it in front of me, but it's pretty lengthy. It might take
But
about an hour.
you're going to email it over.
I'll email it.
We wouldn't be taking it today.
Yes.
We'll be getting some details, full details. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's very helpful. It's difficult to take all in what you said. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Martin and then Sue.
Yeah, thank you. Ken's covered what I was just going to say. I mean, we need a link to the consultations and that, and helps delivered. And the second part was for the community side of it. I mean, there's lots of SNAP meetings going on at present. I'm attending the Roxham one tomorrow. So is this also being delivered through the SNAP partnership? Are they fetching this up at the current meetings?
Yeah, I can. We have a full engagement strategy which includes the SNAP meetings, and the SNAP meeting for tomorrow night is being covered. And the SNAP meeting, councillor, that you attended, we've taken that feedback from you to deliver to a different standard to enable that to be delivered in a more comprehensive way going forward. But we are working with all districts to ensure those SNAP meetings are covered.
Sue?
It's just clarification of something that you said, Liam, hearing, etc. The fraud figure, 60 or 16 million?
Apologies, that's my...
No, it's not apologies, it's me.
16.
16.
16.
Thank you very much. And that was just for Norfolk?
Yes.
Good God. Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okey-dokey. Could I just clarify something you raised earlier on, particularly yourself, Liam, when you made your presentation? You said that by the end of the session, I'm also just making reference for the officers' antennae to go up as well here. You said that you'd like us to have sign off on your your new arrangements, etc. So could you just be a little bit more specific with what it is you'd hope to have from us today or the council?
Absolutely. So what we're looking for is kind of an agreement from the council that they are willing to support the plan through their council, and willing to kind of work towards the same priorities and objectives and an approach that we are. Mike, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Liam. Chairman, just to clarify, what we'll do, South Norfolk Council and Broadland Council separately will do a formal response to the consultation. So in terms of sign off, it's looking at today, is this going in the right direction? And what we'll do, we'll have a formal plan and a formal response from Broadland District Council, just to clarify where we are.
Brilliant, thanks. I just thought we did need to clarify all of that, because we wouldn't be in a position today to sign that off. There's a consultation, there's a response. But I know from my own perspective, everything you've said seems to be coordinating this in a much more clearer way through going forward. And I think also the comments that you made in relation to prevent, I'm acutely aware of what it is you are saying. I think it is way under people's radar. They think nice rural Norfolk, this sort of thing isn't going on. And of course, it is. And it's underneath the radar, a lot of it. And it's going on people's houses, and you might not ever see it until suddenly you have an event or worse. So I think that awareness is really important. As you say, you travel the country as well. I'm down in London quite a lot. Originally born there, as you can tell, probably here. And it's a completely different atmosphere, but it's still going on here, these issues. So, yes, I think the committee, I'm sure that I'm echoing the committee here, who's very much appreciated the update from all of us. And Mike, also, if there's any input that we need to be giving in terms of the response from Broadland Council as well, then perhaps we can do that through yourself.
We will do, Chairman. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again for attending. Much appreciated. And thanks for your valued work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and we will leave your meeting now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much.
Yep. And I'm just going to ask you to leave, and if you could just sit where you are, just get the space so then you can come round for your own safety. Thank you. Yeah, and we do need this PowerPoint because there's no paperwork to the presentation, and this is just to remind everybody where we are. Leisure principles being examined. Sorry, I haven't got my mic on here. Are being put together for a proposal before it goes through the normal process of cabinet scrutiny decision. So we're at that early stage now. So these are your sort of thoughts where you are at the moment, drawing them together. We might be able to have an input today or following this meeting, perhaps. So fire away, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Anticipated.
Good morning, everybody. So I understand it. I think Scrutiny asked for this particular presentation in a time we've all forgotten pre-COVID, which was just ages ago. And I think a lot's changed since then. So since that time, the two council teams have come together, but equally, our communities and what was traditionally kind of the help hub function have come together. And I know Dan will talk about that. So the team structure's changed quite a lot, but we're still doing all of this stuff. And we're in the process at the moment. And many of you, I'm sure in coming weeks, will hear me talk about sort of what the help hub is. And that includes all of this stuff that we consider to be very preventative work. So Dan's going to run you through sort of the community wellbeing stuff. So I know on the presentation it was called Principles of Leisure, I think, but I think our language has changed and we're just talking about it in terms of community wellbeing, but that's just a timing issue more than anything. I think it's still the presentation you're expecting to see. And the final bit from me, Dan's going to go through everything, but Dan's recently been appointed to the role of communities manager. So when we first amalgamated our two existing teams, we had effectively 3 communities officers reporting into me. And we've recently changed that only in the last couple of weeks, actually. Dan's become the communities manager, which is why it's quite right that he, for that reason as well, is sat here today. So I'm going to hand over to Dan and probably chip in annoyingly like I often do.
Thank you, Kerry. Hi all. So community wellbeing, as it started up, it's still essentially the principles of leisure. As you all know, we don't have a formal leisure offer at Broadland District Council and haven't had for a very long time. It tends to encompass within extra elements, and I think we've come to the conclusion that community wellbeing is probably the best description for that, because it is so much more than just physical activity or leisure activity. It's that whole encompassing act of well-being. So as it describes us there, it is helping to develop strong, independent and interactive communities. So to give a bit more of a concept within that, this is kind of how we're defining it. So it's a means of supporting individuals and communities to be independent, self-sufficient, physically and mentally active, creative, healthy, prosperous, supportive, and then a bit more wordily, it's not a word, is it? A bit lengthy, able to access local, regional, national and global funding, knowledge and expertise. I won't just be reading the slides all the way through, it's just this one sums it up quite nicely. Basically, it gives away that it is so much more than getting out and going for a walk or going for a run or being able to sit somewhere in an open space and interact with your family or be creative. There's so much more to it. It's about that, bringing that whole community together and the right of the individual and the ability of the individual to kind of live and be well at home. Taps very well into the council's vision, which we've seen there. The obvious one that jumps out, supporting individuals and empowering communities. I should bring the right one up so I can read it from here. That's pretty much our raison d'etre. That's what we're looking to do. Support them and empower all the way through. But it helps to grow the economy. If there are prosperous activities, if there are community gyms, if there are freelance trainers, if there are arts organisations, if there are various people that are delivering locally, that is local business, that is local employees. It's encouraging people to be fit and well, which enables them to be active in the workplace. They're less likely to be off sick, taking time away. In terms of protecting and improving the natural and built environment, well, we're looking at improving green spaces. Primarily, it's accessing and utilising green space, improving that, so working with them. So things like the Marriotts Way and our Marriotts Way 10K race, being able to access and utilise that. It also has our statutory function of working with assets of community value, so ensuring that community facilities are there and accessed and able to be used for protecting and building from that point of view. Of course, moving with the times, we're always looking at how to improve our service, how to make sure that it's a relevant service, that it's making best use of technology. I'll come to some of this as we go along, but a lot of the projects that we run over the last 18 months have had to very much change the way they operate. And that has often involved a kind of a digital remit or a virtual version, and that's been really quite successful. So we've brought that through as we go. We are part of a bigger picture, effectively. We have the community's offer within itself. That's where we are. It's very much, as a large scheme, it's a prevention thing. It's allowing people to avoid developing poor health, physical, mental, or engaging with need. You've then got the wider early help service that gives advice and support and interaction, and then community-based support. Kerry may wish to chip in on this.
Yeah, of course. So just thinking about our wider offer to customers and to all of our residents, the stuff that Dan's going to talk about today fits so well in that left-hand circle. This idea that we prevent problems from occurring in the first place. Now, as a person goes through life, they're going to have problems because they can be caused by positive or negative, changes in their lifestyle. But the more we can do to keep people fit, healthy and well, the less likely they are to need our support going on, whether they get older or just as their lives change. So all of the stuff that Dan will talk about today, I would just urge you to keep in your mind really about how this is preventing an use of very expensive services that exist, whether that be children's services, adult services, anything really that requires more one-to-one support for that person. All of this stuff is really working towards that. And what we notice more and more through the stuff, which Dan will talk about, is how much that gives us access to people who just need a little bit of advice and support in order to help themselves along their way. I'm sure Dan will give examples, but when we talk to people through Broadly Active, for example, and they're there about their physical health ultimately, but they might mention they haven't seen anybody in a long time. This is the first time they've seen somebody. They're worried about going out because they're worried about how much that costs. More and more, we're seeing these connections between what Dan's team are doing and what we offer, and we have always offered traditionally in the Help Hub, which is debt advice, accessing other local services to reduce loneliness, all of those sorts of things. So they're really tied together. And that bit in the middle about community-based support, you'll all have at some point heard me banging on about the community connectors. That's about us getting out into the community and providing information about both arms of the Help Hub and what we do. That's about telling people what's available to them in terms of wellbeing services and advice and support. And that really pulls those two parts of the team together.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, perfect. And it does the Venn diagram nicely shows how people move through those services. And with one good Venn diagram, it only deserves another, really. So these are the three key elements that we feel that community wellbeing, or that we bring for community wellbeing, that the team delivers. So we're a broker, and I'll describe these slightly more in a second, but we deliver services and we enable services, and collectively that improves community wellbeing. So to give that a little bit more description, as a broker, we can be a conduit for services. So we can ensure that where there is knowledge, where there is insight, where there is policy, both from national government through to local intervention, we can be a conduit to that to ensure that it's happening on the ground. Really look to support that. We can be a filter and or a partner for funding. So there are many times where we've supported funding bids, where we've worked with organisations to bid to County Council, for instance, or to Sport England, or to various arts organisations, to bring money into that local area. We can bring that knowledge, that insight, and that support for it. We can be a collector of data as well, so we can ensure that where we've got the local knowledge, we can try and tap into that. We try and gather that together and then use that more widely and help filter it up to health agendas and things like that to make sure that what's happening at a street level is being reflected at a higher level. As a deliverer, it's relatively simple. We deliver services, but where possible, we try and deliver services where they are not viable as a private or commercial entity, or where they are necessary and not currently available. So we will only try and deliver when we have to, essentially, rather than do it just on a bit of a whim. It's where it's not possible to be done elsewhere. Where there is a good private or commercial entity delivering a service that's accessible and works well, there's no need for us to get involved. But where we can, we will. The same applies where scale is required to ensure that it's viable. You see things, so Broadly Active is a good example of that, the exercise referral provision, a lot of that low-level community bespoke work for people with real clear and high-level health problems. you wouldn't get a private provider to deliver that. It just wouldn't make money ultimately. It would be no reason for them to keep it going, whereas we can deliver that over a much greater scale and make it work and make it serviceable. And we enable, we provide essentially, and there's quite a lot there. The team is experienced, it's well skilled, it comes with a lot of knowledge, it comes with capacity. We have people that can go out and work on the ground and deliver services that can help engage with large numbers of community organisations. We have the skill, we have the talents, we have these high level qualifications in a lot of the work that goes on that doesn't necessarily exist currently. Broadly Active is a good example around that again. We can help provide motivation and enthusiasm. Where there's a kernel of an idea at a community, it needs that little bit of momentum, doesn't it, to get the ball rolling, to get things going, and a bit of enthusiasm, a bit of encouragement, a bit of kind of standing behind people saying, yes, you can do this, you can bring it together, can go a long way.
Sometimes people just need that, don't they?
Yeah.
They've got an idea and they have a moment of doubt and they just need someone to say, you're all right.
This can happen, let's make it work. We can tap into that insight, to that wider data to justify. So again, there are often good ideas out there and there's a feeling that it might meet a need, but we're not quite sure that it does. We can help look for the evidence to prove that, go back and look at the data and talk to partners and try and pull it together. And we can help shape best practice as well. We've got good experience of delivering services and knowing how to deliver them well that's recognised even at a national level. And we can kind of ensure that that is passed on. Enabling is really, it's the most important thing we do. It uses our time, our skills and our resource to really help the community to grow themselves. And that's what it's about. It's not about us going in and doing and intervening. It's about helping the community to do it themselves as far as possible. In terms of how we measure these things and we test that they're effective, I'll do that again. These are the kind of basic questions that we would look to ask. With a project that's new, does it address a demand that's not currently met? Is there a service that is there? Is there a need that isn't being met elsewhere? Can we help with that? Can it or will it not be delivered by others? This is going back to that kind of idea that it's not a viable opportunity for a private provider to do. Has community support and or the individuals in community have the resource, time and skill to deliver? So can it be done without us having to get heavily involved? Can we support a community activity or a project without having to go in with 10 staff for the next year and a half to deliver on a weekly basis? It's much, much better if we can help build that resource locally so it can be done. It's much more sustainable, isn't it? Does it enable individuals and or the wider community to live with more ease in a quantifiable or a qualifiable manner? It's a fairly simple question in the sense, can people live with more ease? Will it help improve someone's life? If we can measure that in some form of way, that makes it a no-brainer, really. If you can put a figure to it or if you can qualify it in a more ethereal way, it's so much easier to justify, isn't it? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to put your finger on exactly how it's improving people, but it is. We try and cover that. And does it support community growth in well-being, employment, social interaction, positive environmental impact or service provision? That kind of goes back to the council's vision and our objectives of looking to show that improvement somewhere along the line. So this draws into the projects. I won't dwell on each one too much because you'll be here all day because there's quite a lot of projects to talk about. What we've tried to do here is just give a brief overview of some of the projects that we're involved in, the kind of core expenditure, so that's actual cost to the core budget within the council, and then income and inward investment brought back to the council. So that's money that comes in that we can utilise as an organisation, and the actual kind of breakdown and where that's profit loss within the council and what that does, and the number of people that we're involved in. I'll explain that a little bit more clearly as we go through. What it doesn't include, and I'm just going to caveat at the very start of that, is core staff costs. So where the staff is not brought in through external funding and it's core funded, that's not included in this. I will talk about what that is. Overall, it adds up to about £300,000 per annum for the entire team, staff and on costs and things like that. The reason I've not put it within the projects directly is because it's not quite as simple as this project takes this much time, it takes that much officer time. If you killed it, that time comes back. It's always a bit deeper than that. If you take away one project, it has an impact on another one. It has an impact on the time that the staff are available and the knock-on effect. So it's not quite as simple as saying 60k of staff time is broadly active. And actually, if you take that away, you'd have 60k back because it wouldn't be as simple as that. But I hope that makes sense as we go. I've got an echo. No problem at all. So the first project up there is Broadly Active. Broadly Active, for those who don't know, is our exercise referral scheme. So that is referral from clinical sources, from GPs, from physiotherapists, nurses, so on and so forth, for people with long-term health problems to undertake a 12-week program of physical activity and general support to help people become more active and independent. It is a directly commissioned service, or partly commissioned service, through the clinical commissioning groups currently, and it actually operates well beyond the borders of Broadland. We now are across the entire central imprint of the CCG, so that is North Norfolk, Broadland, Norwich, South Norfolk, and a fair chunk of Breckland as well. You have to be out the far east and west of the district of the county to not be working with Broadly Active. Core annual expenditure, it costs us nothing to deliver the service beyond time and staff time. We bring in around £67,000 last year in terms of funding for the services. A lot of that goes on direct staffing, so we have some funded staff that are drawn into that. They mostly deliver the service out of district. So primarily the funding that comes into us, we utilise a chunk of that to deliver out of district. There is no cost to the council itself to deliver the service outside of Broadland. Any extra, we also use the money to deliver within as well, and that's balanced out with the money that is core funded. The beauty of being able to deliver at that level of scale is it actually improves the offer for residents. Residents aren't tied to going to their local gym or their local facility on their doorstep. If they live in Aylsham and work in Norwich and they want to access a facility in Norwich, they can. If they work up on the coast and want to access somewhere in Cromer, they can. That's available to them. It allows people to move within borders. We know that whilst we have strict lines, people move around them and can work accordingly. And in 1920, we had around about 1,200 people access the scheme. So it's quite a sizable number of people being worked with. And that is, all of these people are at the very least inactive and have at least one long-term condition. So that could be obesity, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, right the way through to cardiac conditions, stroke, post-operative care, cancer rehabilitation, that kind of thing. It's quite significant. Touch to Teens is our holiday activity scheme. Been running for coming up for 30 years now. It hasn't run very much over the last year, as you can imagine. So the data for this is from 1819, mostly because 1920 was still disrupted. The last time we actually delivered a service was February half term last year. We've just returned and delivered the May half term, and we now will have a program running in the summer again. So we've kind of had a short break while we couldn't deliver the services, and as such, that's why the data is a little bit further back. Each year it costs around about £50,000 to deliver it, and there is an income of around £35,000. It is a chargeable service. We do charge for it. We offer a discounted rate for eligible families. That has since changed. So these figures reflect our last full year. Since that time, we have been through this committee and through Cabinet, and there have been changes to the pricing structure. They have been implemented. Unfortunately, we've not had a lot of time to deliver them, so we don't really know what kind of effect they've had as yet. But there is a change to the pricing and the discount structure. So in 1819, there was a loss of around 15k for the service. But it did work with 2,200 children and young people. So quite a significant number over the course of the year. Places were filled. The member ward grants, you will all be aware of. The allocation to you to use in your ward costs £23,500 a year. It doesn't bring any money directly back into the council. However, of course, there is a lot of funding that it can use to leverage in for your ward. So it often works with partners or is used for match funding to bring in extra funding to the service itself. So whilst there is a due cost to the council, it obviously enables quite a lot of service. There were 33 projects funded last year. Now, it's difficult to put a number of people on that, and I think that's something we're going to look at as we look at the grants going forward, how we measure that. One of the things is, as you put in your bids for the member ward grants and we look at the projects, we don't necessarily capture at the moment, if it's a guide group, are there 50 guides involved? Is it going to work with a new cohort every year? If it's working with a schools group, if it's something that's going on in the village, will 150 people be able to access it? And it would be good to kind of capture some of that data and really see just how big a scale the grant funding really supports. Community at Heart lottery, relatively new, as you know. The lottery system where community groups locally can sign up for free and encourage supporters to buy lottery tickets where they have a chance to win free tickets, large money. £20,000 is the big win, I think, isn't it?
20,000 is the big win, yeah.
No one's got it as yet. There was a £250 winner this week. Someone won £250 this week. So it's been quite successful. The actual cost to the council is just over £1,000 a year. And that's basically for the gambling licence, the Lotteries Council memberships, that kind of thing. That cost is actually absorbed in the income that we make from it, though. So there is no direct cost. Currently, and this is a couple of weeks ago, we estimate that it will bring around £48,500 into the district to good causes this year. It's quite a significant income, really.
Sorry, just the other thing, members may remember that when we set up the lottery, there was a proportion of that was going to go into our own pot, and that's going to start up a grant where I've used the same word twice. That will form a pot of money which groups can use to get their ideas off the ground and to try something new. So we're now in a position where that pot's got over £3,000 in, and we only started the lottery in early part of this year. So we're soon to launch a new grant which will enable groups to have up to £300 to try an idea out. They don't have to be a formalised group or anything like that. So the lottery has sparked additional opportunities for people to get money in. So I can't reiterate enough how amazing this lottery is at enabling community groups in so many different ways. But that's hot off the press that we're about to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's proved really well. There are individual projects that are making a small fortune slowly but surely on the back of this. It's working really well. We've got 53 good causes signed up currently. And again, that's 53 good causes, but even if you assume that they worked with 10 people, that's a huge number of people already, and we know full well that it's a bigger scale than that. So there's lots and lots of people and residents being touched by that project, which is really useful. So I'll move you on to the second one. This is where we build ourselves through slightly. Do you want to jump in now?
Yes, just a quick question. 53. Is there potential for that to increase? Are we letting people know that they can still join the scheme?
Yeah, constantly promoting it and encouraging it. It is open. We're kind of getting 1 or 2 groups a week showing some interest in coming through the process. So it's always growing. Yeah, and we'll continue to do so, I think.
There is no limit.
No.
On your previous slide, with the tots to teens, I think it's although it's showing the £15,000 loss, obviously the key thing from that is the 2,200 applicants that we're helping, which then enables people to go out and work, which then creates the income coming back, which is then coming back into the economy. So I think it's more than just showing a £15,000 loss. It's the combined benefit of everything that's coming through on that.
One of the things that is important to remember with all of these is about the impact. So if something costs £15,000 and impacts one person, then we've probably got a problem. But where it's affecting so many numbers of people and the knock-on effect is so great, that's what we're really trying to analyse as a team at the moment, is where are we putting, where are we allocating money and where best fits, and coming back to members and just kind of showing that to you so you can make some really informed decisions. Because actually, there really is a sliding scale. Sometimes the things that cost the most affect quite a small number of people, but the impact of those is huge, and vice versa. So it's a real balancing act, and something that we're trying to be even more kind of astute with, really, as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of the things I didn't mention with Tots Teens, are trying to keep it brief and not take up too much of your time, but we're one of the only providers of holiday activities that works on a one-to-one basis with children with extra needs. So we're providing a service. Again, it's one of those things that commercially it doesn't become viable because it's very expensive. It's very labour intensive to do. We're able to involve that, so we can work with the children that really do need us, that really do need that support. And that's kind of balanced a little bit by the commercial side of things and the broader pay. And that's why we offer a discounted version as well. So it's yeah, there is a lot more to it than it seems.
Hi, when you say children with extra needs, are you including SEN children in that?
Yep, special educational needs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that it can be, to be honest, there's very little that we don't work with one way or another. It's about the need and the ability to support that, and we try as far as humanly possible to engage the child within the normal day, so it's interactive. So it is. We don't try to isolate. We try and keep it as sensible, engaging, and can't think of the word. Inclusive. That's the word. Thank you, Kerry. That's what I was looking for. As inclusive as possible.
So do you have special groups for SEN children, or are they included in the
No,
normal
it's all
group?
inclusive within normal behaviour. So we offer one-to-one support. So we will add extra staff in to provide one-to-one services where we can, but we don't do isolated individual sessions.
That would include children with mobility issues, would it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
absolutely. We have a small sports grants programme in Broadland and have done for many years. It's a £5,000 pot. We give out grants of £125, I think it is currently. And the idea is it's that little support for those that are pushing on. So there's no age restriction to it. It is for children, young people, all the way through to adults that are aspiring athletes and are progressing through the route, essentially. So that is... They tend to have to be county to regional standard within their sport, and it has to be Sport England recognised sport. But it's to give that little bit of financial boost. When you're competing at a high level, it does get expensive. It becomes pretty challenging. It's good to get a little bit of financial support from the council. We do keep a couple of grand back that we offer for selected sporting champions, where we give them a little bit higher, so about £1,000. But the idea being that they're on the cusp of really going somewhere, and we support them. A really good couple of examples of that are Jonathan Drain, who went to the 2018 Paralympics in Rio. He's a judoka and competed for the Olympics, and that £1,000 helped get him to Rio, essentially. So that was a real key boon for him. And another one is Iona Lake, who's a steeplechase runner who went to the Commonwealth Games in Australia 2 years ago, I think it was. And again, this money helped support her to get there and compete. And she achieved quite respectful finishes. She did very well. So it's that kind of chance to really take those residents that are going somewhere and on the cusp of something and just give them that little bit of extra support to go on.
Sorry, just to put in, when we think about giving money to people like that are doing those sorts of things, the knock-on effect is huge. If we're looking to work with young people that are looking to be inspired or motivated, these are just excellent people that we can draw on and use them as an example. And just by providing that little bit of support to them to help them achieve their goals, they're really, really keen to engage with us as a council. Yeah. And so although it looks like we're helping that one person, and we are, and rightly so, the knock-on effect potentially on other people is massive. And I think we can't underestimate how far that goes for some people, actually, to know. You look at these things, don't you, and you think, well, that could never happen to me. And to find out that that happened to someone that lives mere miles away from you can be incredibly motivating to people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification? I'm just cognizant of the time here. So I don't know where you're at the moment. Do you think you're halfway through, three-quarters way
Not
through?
quite. I
50%
can
way through?
skip this up a little bit if it helps.
It would, because it's actually 11:10.
Oh, yeah.
We really appreciate it, by the way.
No, it's fine.
But also, if you could just be sort of on point, and I think some sportive comments, just speed it up a little bit. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No problem at all. To be honest, with a lot of these, it's a flavour. If you want to know detail about each individual project, we can bring them to you, but we don't really need to take you through them all now. It kind of does give you that flavour of the service and what goes on. And you can see there's lots of things in there. Parkrun, for instance, I will just refer to that one since we're here. Literally costs the council nothing. To start a parkrun costs £4,000. It used to be 3K. We generally have supported it through trying to find funding sources as opposed to utilising our own funding. It's a bit of staff time. I am an event director at one of the parkruns, and I was involved in the setup of all of them in Broadland one way or another. And 2 years ago, I think it was, this is the last date that we've got on there, 13,000 or 13,500 Broadland residents were registered with Parkrun. So that's a free weekly 5-kilometre run available in 4 sites currently in Broadland, in Catton, in Brundall, in Lingwood, and in Blickling. There we go. And 13,500 residents can access it, which is almost 8%, something like that, of the residents, adult population. So it's not bad. And it takes time, effectively. So that's those projects. I'll move those on again, if it's going to work. There we go. We've got it going. Some more projects in there. The only one that flags up as a cost, as you'll see in there, we work quite closely with Active Norfolk, and there is an annual support for Active Norfolk as an organisation that has been going on for many, many years. We pay a small fee to them. That historically was tied into some of the projects that they delivered, things like the village games, you may recall, and they also are responsible for the school games, engaging with the schools. Those services aren't being delivered currently, and we are working with Active Norfolk to try and understand what that means and what this money actually brings to the service and what it does. They are more of a strategic entity as an organisation now. They are the county active partnership. They're no longer the county sports partnership. The sport term has gone. And we're trying to work at where that strategic lead comes in and what service they provide and what we get for that money. But that's kind of an ongoing negotiation, effectively. So this really illustrates what Kerry had just mentioned, and it makes perfect sense. So you can see the projects that we work with as a kind of pyramid of the number of residents supported. So at the bottom, you're working with a large number of residents, things like parkrun, that's high footfall, large numbers of people intervened with, right up to the top of those specialist services, things like Broadly Active, where you're working with people that have great need and are really quite tight. The scale of need goes up. So parkrun, by and large, people are healthy and well. They can come and walk and run and take part. And I know that Ken's recently completed his 50th not park run through lockdown of going around and doing his 5K on a Saturday morning. It doesn't require lots of support. There's not a lot of individual need. Services like Broadly Active at the very top, where it's very intense need. There's a lot of support need. There's a lot of one-to-one act. You can see that that goes up. We work with lower numbers. And then on the other side, equally, the cost per person goes up. It's much easier to work at very large scale for very low need. You can put that in place. Even if it costs thousands of pounds to implement it, the cost per person is very, very low. Whereas at the very top, you're working with people. It is high cost, it is high need, but it's also high impact. It's making a big difference to that individual's life. And that's where it balances itself out, I guess. In terms of outcomes, there's a huge, great range, really. And I've done a bit of a word cloud. You will have to excuse that I took something off the internet that creates these things. Now, word clouds are very easy to create. Phrase clouds are very difficult to create because they don't pick up the phrases. But you can see some of the key things that it does. Increased physical activity, and more importantly, decreased physical inactivity. Sedentary behaviour is being reduced. And that's one of the things we know, that the health risks to that are very high. The chances of developing long-term health problems is greatly enhanced if you are sitting all day and inactive. So we're looking to reduce that, and that's something that our projects do. There is much less social isolation. The projects we do bring people together. It's encouraging communities, whether it's delivered by us or supported by us or engaged by us, to bring communities and individuals together. And that has a knock-on effect. It's not just at the time when they meet. It's not when they join up for their knit and natter club, or they meet in the community group and they go for a walk together, or they play board games together. It's when they follow that up. It's when they go for tea, when they meet with friends, when they see each other in the local pub. It brings that whole thing together. New friends are on there. You see that kind of encouragement. It helps build resilience within the district and within the community. Communities that are closer together are more likely to support each other. We've particularly seen that in the last year with COVID. The mutual aid groups that have formed, that have really worked to look after each other on a door-by-door level, to pick up prescriptions, to pick up shopping, to ensure that people are well. It builds that kind of length and that resilience together. So you see there's a whole range of kind of supportive words, and it makes things more sustainable as a result. This is just a bit of a breakdown slide in between, but it gives that idea that these are some of the services we work on. You may remember the gorillas from the Tour of Britain when that came through. So it's big impact for events as well, big national events that come through that we can tap into and we can engage with. You'll remember the torch coming through Aylsham and through Acle and Thorpe when it did back in the run up to the Olympics in London. They were brilliant days that we were able to be involved with, and there was a great big community coming together on those days that we were able to enable. And we still work through that with projects now. So things like Marriott's Way and the project. It often leads to community development themselves. So you can see how things have a spin-off that we don't necessarily plan to. For instance, we've had some people that have left or been through the Broadly Active Exercise Referral Scheme, have wanted to keep going together after the 12 weeks. There hasn't been a resource naturally. within their local area, and they've wanted to form something. So they've created a group of their own. We've got things like the Frettenham Funsters that meet on a weekly basis and play table tennis and curling and have a cuppa and just generally interact. Rackheath Young at Heart are another group that formed themselves, and we helped them and supported them to do that. They were a lovely story because not only did they form their own little social group that kept meeting and kept being active together, but they started to work with a local care provider who engages with adults with disabilities, and they invited the adults with disabilities along into the group to start attending, and they actually formed a little board game group. And whilst they were playing sports and stuff, they also engaged with various board games, and the users and the members it became very interactive, and it really tapped into supporting a local community organisation, giving them an outlet and another social group and another way of engaging. But it was brilliant for all involved, and the feedback, there was so much kind of positivity that came from that. And we'd never envisaged that. That was never suggested by us. It was something that just kind of organically happened. And you see these projects that kind of grow and turn up into an entity of their own, and it really does support them. In terms of the return on investment, we've kind of talked loosely about this, but this gives a bit more of what we're looking to do. Hopefully reducing that wider service demand. This is the really pushed through, of course.
What the experience is for people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's wonderful. It's example, but you really are out of time.
Okay, no.
And we, as I said, we need this. What I think, I'm going to draw your conclusion. I'm going to draw your attention to this. At the moment, you've got a review going on in terms of leisure principles. Of course, you're looking at everything you do at the moment, and it is different from South Norfolk to Broadland. Down there, you've got quite a robust leisure offer in terms of swimming pool, etc., etc. So we've got talking about a different kind of fishing and trying to make a very little bit of money go a very long way, which we understand, and a lot of good work's done there. But in terms of Mike, in terms of where you are at the moment with your review, are you looking at any further initiatives or changing what you do now? Perhaps to have a look at or think about.
Sure. Did you want me to answer that, or Mike? Yeah. So as we look to the future, what we'll be looking to do is how can we best meet the needs of residents in Broadland and South Norfolk, but based on what's in that area at the time. So, or in that area, full stop. We do have a very different leisure offer in South Norfolk to what we do in Broadland, and we must reflect that. And it's the way I describe it is we want to make sure that all of our residents have access to the same outcomes, but not by necessarily using the same service provision. So the best way we can make people active in Broadland is to utilise the services that exist here. The best way that would make people physically active and better, give them better well-being is to utilise the services that are in South Norfolk. But actually that differs all across the district wherever you are. So in Broadland, what we offer in Aylsham would be different to what we offer in Acle. So we have to be relevant to whatever is going on in that local area, not just per district, it's actually all over. So when we're looking at what service provision we have across the whole team, across the one team, across two districts, it will be different depending on each local area. But with the outcomes of ensuring that people are healthier, both socially, physically and mentally. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. So you talked going through to... Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so back in September, you've got a paper that'll be going back through to cabinets. Exactly. So you've got time to do this, another ONS meeting. Could you please come back with where you see the pressures at the moment and the variance on policy that you believe the executive of the council need to focus on and possibly change? And is that possible to come back to another meeting with where you think the issues are and what you think your proposals would be before the cabinet cycle? I think that's really the only way for us to proceed. That is what the objective was today. Just one moment, Ken.
Anyway, oh, there we are. Yeah, absolutely, Chairman. We'll come back. We'll have a look at where we are today, and then we'll, as we work through proposals, then then we'll come back and I mean you'll have the, I think Sue is going to attach the presentation anyway, So you'll have the presentation obviously from today, and then obviously feedback. But then we'll continue to work on that as we go.
Yeah, so this is it's an interesting time to come here, because obviously we're at the same time working on what the wider team does, and absolutely that will come here. But what we didn't want to do was take away what you'd asked for in the first place, which was to look at effectively leisure. But as we alluded to at the beginning, that does tie into our bigger picture of help. So that's provided kind of through the whole team. So yeah, absolutely, we can come back, present that, and we would do naturally anyway.
Yeah, and clear where you're seeing that you think the council needs to perhaps change policy, adjust policy, where you think the pressures are for us then to look at and perhaps help in terms of a bit of analysis around that. That's the key point at this stage.
Yeah.
Ken, you did indicate you want to come in.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Could I ask, would you consider contributing to maintenance cost of park run places? As you know, with Catton Park, we get 300 or 400 people there now, as you know, and the friends are not going to be able to do there. So, we've got to get other things in, and there is a need for maintenance with the park runs, as you know. Are you prepared to consider that? Because we can't charge, and we don't want to charge the runners.
No, of course not. And that's something where, as far as humanly possible, we try and support the community to do that. So it worked very well with the friends doing the refreshments. And funnily enough, I was talking to the parish clerk this morning about how we can perhaps look to reintroduce that when Parkrun does return. For those who didn't see the news last night, it's been put back till July the 24th again. So we're a little bit longer away. But absolutely, we would look to enable some kind of ground source rather than directly fund it, because it might not be the best use of the money as such. We try and enable that kind of support. So can we bring a voluntary group together that can also offer refreshments and bring income to the park as a result, and therefore help maintain the upkeep? So wherever possible, any groups would try and maintain themselves, or at least the upkeep of the facilities that they're using. So they're trying to work at a cost neutral possible, and we'd work with them to help do that.
So basically, just to make this a little bit formal as well. Sorry, Grant. Sorry, Grant. Make this formal as well. So the understanding is, and I'm going to put this to also a conclusion first, that we either support or you say no to, and that is that you'll go away, have a look at where your pressures are, where you think you need improvement, or perhaps the executive and council needs to adjust policy. The ONS is part of that policy formation, can help in that under the regs and under our constitution. So you're going to come back, Mike, before you get into the cabinet process. We're early enough to be able to do that. It'll be another meeting. So we will agree to that. Yes. Anyone against? No? Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for your time today. We just need to move on. Dave, did you want to clarify anything?
No, I'm just wondering if we can actually, it's a very interesting presentation. We just have no time today. Can we actually get the presentation sent over to us so we can have a read through it?
They've already said that, Dave.
Yeah, that'll be part of the notes.
They're going to send that out. Sorry, Dave, they have said that.
I wasn't sure it was going to be the synopsis or the whole presentation. Just making sure it is the whole presentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Chairman, I'll be sending out the whole presentation to members straight after the meeting.
Thanks very much. Right, well, thanks very much. And I'm actually going to suggest a 5-minute comfort break, because it's coming up to 11:30. Phil, welcome, and please fire away. We need to catch up in a bit of time as well.
That's fine. I hesitate to say it then, but I think this can be relatively straightforward, but I don't want to preempt where we're going. When I've said that before. Yes. So page 6, item 9, maintenance of bridges in Broadland. So this has been a matter that Overview and Scrutiny has asked to bring back before it. Clearly the BVR has been the subject of various reports in recent years, but this one has just picked up on the issue of the maintenance of bridges. I think the main concern was, well, what's the budget? What's the level of repairs and maintenance that's going to be required? And do those two things match up? I hope the report gives you some reassurance that those things do match up. I'm not expecting you to have gone through the very details of the sample report I've put in there, but I wanted to put it in there to give you reassurance of the level of detail that's gone into. You have the summary sheets that provide the summary of maintenance that is required in low, medium and high orders of priority. You've got the budgets. Those two things do cover each other. And the next will be to put that into a programme of works, a schedule of works as we go forward within the budgets that we've got. There is always, when you have a series of structures such as this, there is always that risk, and the report tries to highlight the fact there could be some major structural issues as we move forward. But the reports, the surveys that have been carried out don't highlight any of those, don't identify any of those. But clearly, there is always a risk if you have even our own properties. There is always that challenge that we may have a big bill further down the line. But as I say, nothing identified in the surveys that were carried out. I hope the report is self-explanatory. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Phil. Grant, you'd raised earlier on that an issue about some clarity on Reedham Key. So I guess that I understand Sue actually tried to clarify this with Phil in the interim while he was at which is very good of Sue actually. And I understand, Phil, that you're saying that you've sent Grant an email back in March or April around this?
There was just a fairly brief email exchange at that time. I think, Councillor Nerdin, your concern was, is there any capital budget for Reedham Key? From recollection, before it came under sort of effectively my directorate, then I think some work had been done to inspect the quay, I think led by Pete Leggett from recollection. Again, off the top of my head, that was saying, well, there may be some work, but it could well be in about 20 years' time. No? Okay, well...
Yeah, well, what happened when Richard Block was in charge of the environment, I think it was, whatever, he was trying to arrange a sort of like a group thing whereby Reedham Parish Council, the Broads Authority and Broadland District Council were going to set up some kind of a trust to invest in that that quay and its maintenance and the incredible amount of money that was needed to keep that quay in good condition. So that was just something that I wondered whether we had we're making provision for the repairs and maintenance of the bridges, whether we would be doing something similar for the Reedham Quay.
Yeah, okay. So just to recap, and you'll have to forgive me because I've come obviously with regards to the BVR. So, but my understanding is there is not an immediate short-term pressure in terms of raising funds for significant repairs to Reedham Quay. Again, it comes back to the point I was making about the bridges. There will come a day when we face a big budget for that. My understanding is we are not setting aside money into a budget at this point in time, but I would probably concur with you and say I'm not aware that arrangement has been set up, but I would argue that it is something that we do need to be thinking about and setting up and acting upon, certainly within the next year or so. But it is not an urgent matter.
Okay. Peter?
I think you may have partially answered my question, Phil, but I'll ask it anyway. In the report, which obviously sets out very clearly what we're going to do over the short term in terms of repairs that are needed, what is concerning me is what are we going to put aside in budget provision for future needs, because clearly bridges will always need maintenance, sometimes major maintenance, and I would like to think that we're actually making provision now for what is almost certainly going to be needed in the future.
Yeah. The shorthand answer is yet to be agreed. Now, clearly, even after, I mean, you can see in the report, even once there's about 3 years in which there's quite a substantial amount going into capital funds. After that, it drops down. Having said that, it will still accumulate. So it's not like we're going to have nothing set aside for capital funds. There is also, over these next few months, and I'd say 3 or 4 months, there's a discussion with Bure Valley Railway in terms of liabilities, in terms of the relationship moving forward. And I would hope that there will be further consideration as to those long-term accumulation of funds as part of that discussion with the BVR. But at this point in time, I don't have anything apart from saying there will still be some capital funds going in and accumulated over the years.
Sorry, so are you saying that there's a possibility that Bure Valley Railway will be taking on the liability of these bridges?
No, I don't envisage.
I wouldn't have thought something that they readily agreed.
No, but I think no. All I'm
sorry.
simply saying is that there will be an exploration of that relationship, and as part of that exploration of that relationship, going forward, and it may well be the status quo, but there's a discussion to be had, and that will be in the mix with everything else.
But we are actually actively considering needs for the future.
Yes.
Phil, could you just clarify? Because there's a statutory requirement for local authorities to look after these bridges, isn't there?
So they are legally the only, even when, and I mean, clearly this council chose not to sell the freehold of the BVR, but even when it was, the bridges would have to have been our responsibility, and it could only be changed through an act of Parliament.
Exactly. So there's no question about our liability there.
There is no question about
whatsoever.
our liability.
Okay, thank you. And David, now David's an observer here, but as with other panels and that, the chairs do at their discretion let other members ask a question. So go ahead, David, you want to ask
Just
something?
a general question. I mean, it's nice to read a report that you actually know something about. I mean, I've walked up and down the railway line so many times. I've seen the bridges, I've seen the rust, and I can see the pictures. Last week I did congratulate Phil on such a good report because it's very comprehensive. What really bothered me, and I did mention it last time, is, we seem to have taken the rap. I mean, we have a new trailway going along the railway from Wroxham up to Aylsham, as we know full well, but we are supposed to finance it, and it is a county council initiative, and I think somewhat we might be being shortchanged by the county. Since it's their initiative, they might consider helping out. And when we devised this trailway strategy at the county, that was implicit in it. So I wonder why this has fallen through.
Phil, I'm just going to clarify for us as well. Are you talking about the Marriott Way or the?
I can clarify, Chair, if you want. So you may or may not be familiar, but there is some European funding that was secured, Interreg funding, for effectively a project along the Bure Valley Railway, but also enhancing tourism within the Wroxham, Hovton, Broadland area, led by the County Council. Now, that does allow for improvements to be made along the Bure Valley Railway, around the use of it, along the footpath connections and the other connections around the Bure Valley Railway. To address your direct question, the issue of Interreg funding is it secures funding for additionality. It doesn't allow us to cover our ongoing maintenance liability. So where we have a ongoing maintenance liability for things such as the bridges or the maintenance of steps or the maintenance of the footpath. That's our liability, and we can't use direct interreg funding simply to cover that liability. So we do still have that liability. I think it's going to be hands up to us, because I'm not saying anything that no one who is familiar with the BVR isn't already aware of. We haven't had a maintenance program for some time.
Yeah.
There's justifiable reasons for that, not least because County Council bridge team have been fairly short-staffed and distracted by other things. So we are playing a bit of catch-up, and we can't use that interreg funding to play catch-up on our existing maintenance liabilities.
That sort of ties up with the clarification we had just before that as well, Phil, really, doesn't it? Thank you. Okay, Martin.
Thank you. I think mine ties in with what you've just said. I know that when we discussed this probably 18 months, 2 years ago, it was around the ability to get the building works done. And you said that at that point in time, it was geared around Norfolk County Council and the bridge team and there. So within the programme of works, what are the delivery timescales for this? Because obviously what we don't want to be in is a situation where, again, these works get delayed, and it then creates further problems because of further dilapidations, and etc.
No, absolutely. In terms of the bridge team were only ever really used for inspection purposes anyway. So what we've now gone is to use a different consultant. So we've moved away from County Council bridge team because they were stretched themselves. And you can obviously see the report from the consultants attached and appended to this report. In terms of then the works being carried out, as I said, the next step will be to put that into a programme of works. Blindingly obvious that we put the high priority works first. And again, we'll get in, there are a number of consultants, number of contractors that will do bridge work for us. We're contracting some to do some emergency repairs on one of the bridges anyway. So that is clearly the next priority, programme of works, and then get those contractors in to do those works accordingly.
That will be over a 3-year programme.
I envisage that, it may well be the long term, could be longer. I don't see why it can't be within 3 years though.
Thank you, Phil. Is there anyone else? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think those answered my question, but in the Appendix 1, they're called Up and Under, aren't they, the consultants? And they did a very detailed report. But I was looking at the medium priorities, and I just wondered, I didn't quite hear, I think you may have answered that. I was going to say, roughly when do you think the medium priorities are going to be dealt with?
It's a very good question, Councillor Leggett, which I don't have an immediate answer to. But I think in very simple terms, anything high priority, I would like to be seen in the next few months at the earliest.
Yeah.
If we're then saying we're estimating a 3-year programme in total, medium term, I would suggest is anything sort of between year 1 and 2, probably within that.
Year 1 and 2.
Again, we need to make sure that the contractors can work to that sort of timescale. I don't see any reason for delaying. We've clearly built up a fairly significant reserve fund anyway, but I don't want to overpromise and under-deliver. But I don't see any major reason for delaying. The main delays will be procurement, getting the contractors, because contractors are incredibly busy at the moment.
Yeah.
So in my mind, those high priority in literally the next few months, and anything medium, potentially 1-2 years.
Because we have had instances throughout the country and the world where, bridges have suffered with even more and more traffic and people.
Absolutely.
And it could be quite serious.
Absolutely. There's nothing in here that is certainly in the medium term items that are raising major alarm bells for me. But again, we don't underestimate, the seriousness of having the responsibility of structures like this.
Thank you. Just one question from me, and I think we can wrap this up then. On the Adam and Eve bridge, little hobbies know it well. Do you know when this? I've lost it. It's probably here, Phil. When this was. Oh right. Okay. Yeah. March. Okay. Yeah. No. There's been some damage to this. I'm just trying to see the date of the report.
No,
March,
so for those that aren't familiar, the Adam and Eve Bridge is at Hobbis. For those that are familiar, there's quite an S bend at that particular point. It has been, I think, struck. A couple of the pillars have been struck. We're actually getting and commissioning emergency repairs for that work to be carried out.
Brilliant, because I was literally about to give you a call on that, and then I thought, well, today perhaps.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we're aware of that. It is clearly you are going to get those. I was going to say day to day. Let's hopefully not day to day, month to month sort of instances where a repair needs to be carried out as an emergency repair.
There's an habitual one down there because we have HGVs that should go down the wrong way, around HME, around the other way to the prison.
And it's a tight corner, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get HGVs trying to use it all the blooming time. But there's been the chevrons knocked off in the winter. A car hit the chevrons, and the chevrons are not being replaced to help.
Yeah.
Now I think that might be a county issue on the chevrons. I don't know if it's them or us, but that's not helping at the moment at night time.
Yeah.
And some go through night time, constantly getting hit.
Yeah. No, I am aware. Some emergency works need to be carried out. Just to again reinforce those effectively the columns at the corners of the bridge. We're aware of that. That's outside of this report, which is ongoing maintenance issues. In fact, what I'll do following this meeting, I will just make a chasing email just to say where are we on that. But last I heard, we were getting some contractors in to carry out those repairs.
I was chairing Buxton last night, and issues come up. We've got one of the parish councillors right in the corner as well, who's had a car going into a front garden. But if you could email me as well, that'd be very.
Just to update you on that particular Adam
then
Bridge.
I'll push that through to Clark. Because we've got it on our safety agenda.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's great.
Right. Sue?
Hello, thank you, Phil.
That's okay.
I'm just interested in the Hobbiton footbridge. I was quite shocked to see the costs that were involved in that. And one of the things I was concerned about is there a reason why that has so much needs doing to it? And is there any way of improving maintenance on that going forward if it needs more than others, for example?
Yeah, just bear with me. Let me just try and find it. So we are looking at page 14, I think, aren't we? I can't. To be fair, I'm going to be very honest with you. I can't tell you why the particular costs associated with that are so high. Hobbiton footbridge has caused us a little bit of problem. A lot of the decking, so that the surface was wooden and so had rotted previously, and whether that has meant that also because that had rotted to some extent, that caused other damage associated with it. I don't know. I'm really talking off the top of my head, and that's a dangerous thing, as ever. But it has needed some attention in the last couple of years anyway. Clearly it needs some further attention. It is quite costly, but I'm afraid these sorts of structures are often quite costly anyway.
Done that might change the nature of like you've got wooden deck. Is there something that can be done that would either make that stronger or would change it to something else? Is I guess what I'm saying, because it seems to be something that would happen repetitively if left.
There was a question around so the replace missing brackets, which is the reference number 7 on page 14. About the third bullet point down, £20,000. There was a conversation in terms of replacing those with things that would corrode would corrode more slowly over much. But apart from that, when you're looking at steel plate repairs, concrete repairs, they are just expensive things to do. And they're such large bits of steel or concrete that to replace the whole thing just would be even more expensive.
Thanks very much. Anyone else before we bring this to a conclusion? Well, look, Phil, first of all, I think, our point about doing this exercise has been well worth it because,
Absolutely.
and I think you would agree with that, Phil.
Absolutely.
And the report and the contract's been used to pull all this together or whatever is absolutely superb. And this level of detail on it, as you know, in the past, we've not had this kind of level of detail
Absolutely.
going back over the years. And also the issues around budgets wasn't clear at one point. That's all now become clear now, and that's really, really important. And clearly the council, just in terms of policy, I think we can all conclude that it is in a position in terms of its management liability and in terms it has got the funding in place to see this through in terms of liability, which is part of our remit as ONS to concur on that too as well. So we can concur on that. For the council, and have that in the minutes accordingly, which is what we're supposed to be doing here.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, Phil. It's much appreciated.
No, genuinely, I think it's been a good example. Yeah, I think it's been quite right to have that scrutiny. I know it's been over a period of time. I think it's pleased to be able to bring the report to you today. I'm pleased that we're in a good position with it, even though that we still need to do these works. Just also for information, we've literally just waiting for a new community assets manager to join us. So I, for one, will be very pleased to be able to pass some of this responsibility onto a gentleman called Michael Horton, who starts with us at the end of this month. And the BVR will be clearly one of the things that he will take more responsibility for, including this work going on.
Quick question, is he from the private sector or local authority?
He's had experience of both, but he's been working down in Suffolk recently with a portfolio of about 500 premises and properties and assets that he's been managing. So very well experienced in this sort of field.
Well, it's happy days for you, Phil.
Happier at least, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
All right.
Much appreciated.
Does that
I've just finished. I've even stood up.
Yeah, no. Does that include the pieces of land that the council owns that this person is going to look into as well?
Will Chair allow me to answer that?
Sorry,
It's fine.
Martin was just clarifying. Sorry.
Just very quickly, Councillor Nurden was saying, will his responsibility extend to all the other council assets that we've got? At this point in time, a review is being carried out on every single piece of land that we have and every asset that we have. That is being carried out actually by Maura White at this point in time. And so that's mapping it and effectively asking a number of questions. Can we keep it and maximize its use better? And that may well be for community, biodiversity, for planting, for other uses. Could we just sell it? Would that be in our best interest? Could we develop it ourselves? Asking questions around all of our own assets. So she's carrying out that review of our assets, and I see Michael Horton's role as potentially, if it's something that we're going to sell or if it's something that we may want to bring forward for development ourselves, then it may well be that he then takes responsibility for it. If it's for biodiversity or planting, it may well be Kirsty in her role as environmental strategy coordinator takes a role in bringing that forward for, shall I say, greener purposes. So a review is being carried out, and I'm sure the new community assets manager will have a role to play in implementing some of that review. Is that sufficient? I shouldn't have asked that, should I? Thank you.
Sue, would you like to present this? And of course, if you could go 2 items to also touch back in. One's on the event we was looking for, and the other one is
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so if we turn to page 61, we can see there the items that we've considered today. So we have I believe, reached the outcomes that were desired for the bridge maintenance reserves. And we've had an update from the police with the community safety update. The third item, provision of leisure principles or community wellbeing, as it's now known. I think we've agreed that that will come back to the next meeting, which is over the page on the 24th of August. That will be about a week or two before you'll review it before Cabinet, so you get a little bit of time if there's anything there you want to sort of mark there for officers. So on the 24th of August, we will have that item. We've also got two other items, one of which is a request from Sproulston Parish Council, which the committee will recall came to us back at the start of the year, and that was to provide guidance for the town and parish councils in respect of public open space. So we've got some planning officers coming along to provide a report on that. And also, you'll recall at the January meeting, Councillor Shaw put forward an item which was engagement in public consultations. Done a little bit of work around this, and there is at the moment no official way of engaging with the public. I think each department does it in a different way. So at the moment, I'm trying to collate those together to provide you with some kind of a basis for a report. But you'll have heard at the last meeting, we are going to be recruiting a customer engagement officer. Yeah, customer experience officer, who will be taking that on. So it's quite timely that that will come to you in August, because hopefully that person might be appointed around about that time. So it'll be quite a good time to kind of look at how we engage with the public with consultations. So that will be for the August meeting. Then we'll move ahead to the November meeting, where you've got two reviews of policies. One is for the housing allocations policy, which was implemented in April. So you'll be looking to see if that meets the desired outcomes, whether there's any further recommendations you want to make for improvement of that. And the other one is a review of member grants, which will be ahead of any changes that take place for that. So we've got in a little bit early in November there to hopefully put forward any outcomes you want to make there for recommendations. The next item is still to be advised for a date, and the apprenticeships and new schemes. I'm just waiting for some feedback on how that's progressing, because you'll remember at the last meeting, the committee agreed that council needs to make representation to the Secretary of State. So I'm waiting for an update on that. So I'm hoping that something can come to you at the next meeting, but I haven't got anything to report on that as yet. At the last meeting last week, we reviewed, we looked at the empty homes policy, and members wanted to review that in a year's time. So that will be coming back to you round about June. We haven't got a date for that meeting yet, because it will be in next year's programme of meetings, but that will be to look again to make sure that that's doing what you'd intended it to do, and to identify any recommendations as that moves forward. So that will come in June. Then moving on to page 63, we've got the time and task panel, which will be coming back to the meeting once it reaches a conclusion. That's still ongoing. And then moving downwards, we've got the Broadland News. So again, that is still being done. Steve's going to give me some wording for that. So hopefully we'll make the following edition of the Broadland News, just to get some words out there. I don't have any updates. I have asked Councillor Coppleston whether she had any updates on Better Broadband for Norfolk. I've had no response yet, but I'm assuming that that's still going ahead for an all-member briefing, because we said that's something that all members will want to know about. So hopefully in the summer, Karen O'Kane will come along and brief all members on that, which will be really interesting. I don't have any updates relating to water, and we haven't got Ken Kelly here today either. So I don't have any updates for the committee on that at this meeting. And again, the last item is just still on hold due to COVID, but hopefully that should be over soon. And over the page, again, just points out that the time and task panel, we're due to have another meeting in July on that. So on conclusion, that will come back to this committee. And again, just the meeting in October, which is as the workshop to look at the budgets.
To the thanks, Nancy. Can we cover the I don't think we covered this yet. Or did you? What do you mean? We need a box with asking for the environmental officer to pop along and she could give us a presentation on her role, how she sees her role, and how that interfaces with the council's policies and other work. I understand she's not been here long, but it's not about I've achieved this, it's about giving us an overview. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. About giving us an overview, which is what was asked for last week, as I remember it. So, but the committee needs to agree, of course. Do we agree with that committee? Wonderful.
Chairman, can I suggest that we scope that out? I think it was Sue Catchpole who put that forward. So if we could maybe scope it out and just see what objectives you want to get from that, so that we can really pin it down on what you want to get out of it as a committee.
I would agree with you in terms of outcomes. I think it's very clear and simple, this one. I think what we were saying, and I think what your point was, Sue, as well, is that we've got this new appointment for this role that we've not had before. And we've got environmental policies in place for this officer then to help champion and see through. So basically what we want is we want to meet her, comes along and just outlines her job. Now she sees it, now she sees her role and function interfacing, and just very simple.
It was because we were asked to accept the £750,000 going into a fund, a reserve fund for projects in the environmental area. And so I was hoping that she might give us a clue as to what kind of projects they might be looking at to start off with, so that we could input at that stage if possible.
So that just saves us time on sitting down, round the table, basically. Because I think it's just straightforward, Sue, you know. I do appreciate it. I mean, sometimes you do need quite heavy scoping, but I think on this one it's pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you. So we've got that as a new box. Is everybody happy? Oh, sorry, Sue. Two Sues, you, Sue, and then you, Sue.
Completely different subject. Wondered whether we could bring to ONS the committee meetings times and how going forward the meetings are going to be arranged. There's been talk about the meetings being moved to daytime, and whether that comes under ONS.
Thank you, Chair. I'll cover that. We discussed this at the Member Development Panel meeting, and it comes within their remit. So I'm working with the Chair as a set of questions to scope out to all members to talk about timings of meetings and where that best fits. So that does sit within the Member Development Panel, but that questionnaire will absolutely be coming out to everybody so we can look at timings of meetings, best day, best time, and how we can better accommodate those, because there were some concerns raised rightfully by members of the panel in terms of late meetings, lone working, and members and officers getting home late at night following meetings. So it's something that I'll be picking up with Councillor King as Chairman of Member Development Panel.
Right, okie dokie. Right, okie dokie. Was there any, sorry, Sue.
Yes, I wonder whether it would be possible to go back to a system where we receive paperwork before we come to these meetings, because there were a couple of items on the agenda today for which there was no paperwork at all. I'm somebody who finds it quite difficult to look at these screens because of the light. I really do feel quite strongly that we should have some background to what we're coming to listen to in order to be able to engage effectively. I'm not sure why we didn't get the paperwork on this occasion, but there wasn't any. So in addition, I think it's useful. I like to write notes on things when people are talking about it. So that's how I engage and learn things and understand things. So for me, it's really important. And I would hope to think that we could actually make sure that that paperwork comes through with the agenda in the future, if that's possible. Thank you.
I think the point that you're raising, Steve, Steve, talking to myself here, Sue, is was around the provision of leisure principles.
Well, yes, there's that, and in fact, the community safety update. They have a draft plan. They could easily have provided a link to us for that, so we could have read it before the meeting. I fear that what I feel is that I'm coming in blind. I don't know what we're actually looking at and what we're discussing. So I have no background information. So to synthesize all of this information that they're piling at you in one go and then try to make any sense of it and understand and analyze it all in one meeting is quite difficult, I would suggest. So I see no reason why I couldn't have had the community safety partnership draft plan, a link to that before, and I could have read it, and then I would have some idea what they were talking about.
Right.
So it wasn't just the leisure principles, it's both things. I think there should be something which it gives some explanation of what it is we're looking at and why we're looking at it, and allows us to have some background knowledge.
Would other members concur with that, or I'm seeing some pretty revved up yeses here. So, and I know yesterday at our admin meeting, Martin and Sue, I kind of preempted this and did say I thought that this would be an issue yesterday. So, but it's obviously you couldn't do anything about this yesterday because the officers are not prepared. So glad we're all sort of seeing this in the same way.
Chairman, can I?
Grant, just for
Yeah.
Sue,
Yep.
because then you might be
Yep.
saying who we pick up. Grant.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one thing I don't want is to have an agenda coming out with 200 pages or 300 pages that I've got to work through in my limited time available.
But you still want some. But you still want some paper on the issues. Okay. Sorry, Sue.
Yeah, I was actually just going to agree with you, to be honest. I think it is good practice, and also for residents to be able to read what's on the agenda rather than just a title. So we do take that on board. I think it's just really unfortunate that we had two. The police, yes, they were coming in from outside, but yeah, I agree, they could have sent a link through. With the leisure report, I think because the idea was that they were coming in very early and to give us an overview, I'm not sure that they would have had anything. It wasn't like, you were going to present to Cabinet in a month's time, so you've already got the report. But yes, I agree, they could have done a, yeah, exactly. In a way, probably not a good idea to give you the presentation before because you preempt, but yes, I agree with you. Some kind of a brief summary of what we're going to talk about would be good. So I will take that back. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, there's well-being, isn't there? There's types of teams. There's this. So it could have all those headings, very simple, and then that also helps them to focus around that in a very defined way. Because I also noticed that when that was being given, when we have a normal, officer's report, as Phil's done or others, it's pointed, but there was a lot of which was going way beyond the way to, yeah. So, Peter, you want to?
What we really need, Chairman, I think, is an executive summary for reports like that.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I don't want to wade through the presentation, which I must confess I found rather tedious, because basically what you really need to know are the key facts, not all the embellishments. If you want the embellishments, you can ask for them. So executive summary, I think, is what I'm asking for.
The embellishments I didn't find helpful. So that's me personally. Thank you very much. Okay, right. So I think we're all there now, aren't we? Yes. All happy with we've got to agree the work program. We've just had the extra boxing, etc. So all agreed. Right. I think that's the end of our business now, isn't it? Yes. Right. Thanks once again. Lovely to see you all. Drive safely and stay safe.